All right, welcome to the Swedish Junior Hockey Podcast. Jacob Dahlin here, your host. With us today is Sean Werth, the general manager of the Bradford Rattlers Junior A up in Canada. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Jacob. It's a pleasure to be here. I've listened to a lot of episodes, and I really appreciate what you're doing for the hockey world.
Well, thanks. So just for those who don't know, this is now the third member of the Bradford Rattlers organization. We had Johan Eriksson on actually twice. Jacob Rodin was on once, and I've had you in the queue for a while and pinned you down a little bit, so it'll be a fun conversation. So before we get started on the Rattlers, which you guys just won the championship in the GMHL, but give us a little background. I know you are a Canadian, so
Yep.
and your background and what your role is there with both. We'll talk about the Eliteprospects showcase or the camp
Mhm.
as well. I want to talk about that. And I want to talk about the GMHL some too. So Bradford Rattlers, GMHL, Eliteprospects are my three bullet points I want to hit on. But give us a background on, first of all, where is Bradford? Where are you, and where you come from, and your background?
Yeah. So Bradford's located about 45 minutes to an hour north of Toronto. My background, not so much as a player. I actually started with this organization. Well, there's a Swedish guy running the Rattlers in a summer camp at that point named Johan Lundskog, and I worked for him as a camp counselor while I was studying university. I'm local to this area, and essentially, once I graduated, the company that owns the Rattlers and the summer camps brought me in mostly in a marketing position, actually. Helping out. Social media was just starting about 10 years ago to become more relevant. And that was actually my first position. And pretty quickly, within the first 8 to 10 months of me starting up the company, like Johan ended up accepting a position in the Allsvenskan League with Oscar. He eventually went on to Frölunda. So there's always been a big Swedish history with the Rattlers. At that point, the team was half Swedish, more or less. But I was kind of just thrown into the duties of running the team because I was, in the office and someone had to, start signing players and handling billeting programs and things like that, both for the summer camp. And I was pretty familiar with the camp because I had worked it, from ages 17 to 20 as a summer job. So I knew everybody, the owners knew me. And just I wouldn't say I was ever given the job. I just started doing the duties. And then after doing that for, 2 or 3 months in the off season when Johan was transitioning, they just started calling me the manager. So I kind of took over the team at that point. And then I was running the summer camp with a team of individuals, a couple other guys at the company. And as they left, it just kind of became, my show running all the junior programs. So I've been overseeing those now for about 6 or 7 years as like the camp and the team, and I've had the team under my direction now for 9 seasons, so quite a long time for this level to be with one organization.
So Bradford Rattlers, how old is that organization and that team?
So the team itself, I believe, is 22 or 23 years old. So when it started, it was in the Ontario Junior Hockey League, the Hockey Canada system. And it was called the Thornhill Rattlers. And what ended up happening is I guess 2 or 3 years into their tenure there, uh, the OJHL started banning import players. They also at the same time were trying to move from Thornhill to Bradford, and which is about an hour away. Bradford's farther north. And the Ontario Junior Hockey League, they wouldn't allow the move. It was being blocked by a local team in Newmarket. And essentially, it kind of came to a crescendo where there was a group of teams in that league that wanted to break away to continue having import players. And the company started then. So That's when this all kind of came to be. I came in about 10 years after that when, well, Johan had the team for about 8 or 9 years, and then I've had it now for 9 years. So that's kind of how the transition went.
So the organization or the ownership group, talk a little bit about the ownership group of do they have other teams as well?
Not in this league. They've owned close to 20 junior teams over they're pretty old guys now. Bob Russell is the founder of that company. So they've owned teams in the Ontario Junior Hockey League, the BCHL. There's a publicly traded company here called Canland, which does arena building. He used to be a vice president and director of development there. And he started getting into the hockey programming side, starting summer camps and residence programs. Junior teams and getting into the business on that side. So that's kind of where he started all of this. And yeah, one of his ideas was starting a league called GMHL, which was one division of the company. The company owns like adult leagues across Ontario. We do summer camps. They've owned in residence buildings. They've owned teams in other leagues before as well. At one point, up to 3 teams in Hockey Canada. And yeah, basically that was a long time before I got here, so I'm giving a pretty quick
Yeah. That's interesting.
that history. But the way I understand is that's kind of how it all came to be. And then when they started this league, things kind of took off. They had 6 teams the first year, or 7 teams, and then within 2 years they were up to 14 or 16, and then yeah, it's just kind of been running since then.
So all right, so let's talk now about the Rattlers specifically, and then a little bit about the GMHL. But you just finished off. You had an incredible run. I don't know what was the actual record for the last season. Ended up being
yeah, technically it ended up being 49-2-2 with one game that we were unable to play. So.
Okay. And that was so how many games did you guys have in the playoffs? That was because you ended up winning the entire thing, right?
Yeah, so we ended up not having so many playoff games. We ended up with a first round bye, and then we had best of 5 series, which we swept 3 games, and then we had a best of 7, which we eventually won in game 5. So yeah, 4 wins, 1 loss, and then we had this. They did a tournament. They called it a national championship this year, where they brought over teams from all the different divisions, the winners plus the host. So that ended up being another 4 games for us in playoffs, in addition to the 42 regular season. So yeah, I guess in total it was 11 plus 42.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So so the league itself, how centralized is that? How far do you guys travel with your league games?
So our farthest road trip is about 5 hours up into Quebec. They divide the league into a north and a south in Ontario, at least. The north is, I would say, the more established teams, the ones who have been around for quite a long time. So it's considered, I would say, the top division. It's where most of the player advancements are coming from. And then, there's a south division as well, but there is very little crossover, except for a couple league events, such as, some tournaments and showcases and that. But they try and keep the more established teams pretty much together. And so we're the most south team in the North Division, and we only go up, which is pretty good. We have a decent travel schedule. It's 1.5 to 2.5 hours is the majority of our games.
Yeah. All right. And so help us out a little bit too, for those who don't know. You got the tier 1 in Canada, which is going to be the Q and the WHL and the OHL. And then you got tier 2, which is the CJHL, I guess, plus the BCHL now is what you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And I guess, so the OJHL is part of tier 2.
Yeah, absolutely. And tier 1 hockey is the CHL in Canada. It's major junior. And then, within the junior A leagues in Canada, there's 13 of them. And it's within the range. Not all those leagues are equal. And I think the easiest way to divide them is using can you commit NCAA D1 out of that league? And there's a lot of amazing leagues and the OJHL and the BCHL, the AJHL, where you're seeing them, commit players D1 or even have players ranked for the NHL draft. But then within that, there's probably a top tier and then a second tier of junior A leagues. And the second tier would be the ones where, like a good 20-year-old, his best chances are probably committing NCAA D3, if that's what he's looking to do. So I think within Canada, the simplest way to look at it, within the CJHL Tier 2 Junior A leagues, are you in the top half, which is a D1 league, or are you in the bottom half, which, your best chances are probably D3. So our league would probably rank, even though we're not in the Hockey Canada system, we would be in the second half, where good players in our league can advance NCAA D3, high-end ACHA, or start their minor pro careers in, third or fourth levels in Europe, or go down to the States and, best case, maybe have an SPHL training camp, but most of the time end up in the federal league to start out their junior careers or their pro careers after junior.
Yeah. Is it considered, so how many of the so Bradford, so GMHL, is it still considered Tier 2 then?
So the level that they call it is Tier 2 Junior A. The caliber is comparable to what those leagues would provide. Similar level leagues in Ontario would be like the SIJHL and the NOJHL.
Yep.
And within the leagues, there's a lot of discrepancy between divisions or between teams. But for the most part, the blanket statement of Tier 2 Junior A, covers a very wide range of leagues. And
it's so much easier. It's so much easier in the US in one way, because you can kind of say North American Hockey League and this NCDC are the Tier 2, and that's it.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of, and like if you're talking in US terms, like this would be considered a Tier 3 league. Yeah. And the majority of Tier 2 Junior A leagues in Canada would be considered Tier 3 had they been in the US, because like Tier 2 in the US means free to play, maybe some apartment payment, but like Tier 3 is tuition associated, and the majority of Junior A Tier 2 leagues in Canada do have tuition associated at this point.
But a big advantage. So let's talk about the advantages of and the differences, even though it's pay to play. When you compare the Tier 3 in Canada versus Tier 3 in the US, the tuition is much different.
Yeah. Once you're into this level of hockey, I think a confusing point amongst players that they might not understand, it's more important the team you're with than the league you're in. Yeah. And the differences between Canadian opportunities and US ones. Like if you're a Canadian passported player, the Hockey Canada Junior A system is I think amazing. Like there's so many different opportunities. You can travel to all across the nation. You can attract offers, from a variety of different leagues, and some of them are unbelievable. You see NHL players, going from some of these Tier 2 Junior A leagues in Canada. And then, if you're comparing that to the States, in the States, it does tend to be a lot more expensive, upwards of like 3 times the cost for some of these teams compared to playing in Canada, which a lot more American players are catching on to nowadays and taking their careers north of the border, because like you can play as an American in Tier 2 Junior A and save, over the course of 3 years, a significant amount of money and still end up playing NCAA D3 at the end of it all. So like that's kind of the theme that's been happening lately. It definitely seems a lot more popular, but at the same time, a lot of Canadian players want to go down to the States, and I endorse that. I think it's great just to have opportunities abroad to test yourself. And like if you get into the nickel and diming of what offers do I have and what's that going to provide me, but there's a lot more to it than just like it's where are you living? Is it a safe city? How are the people? Are you going to be part of a winning culture? How are the facilities? It all goes into it. And like the tuition amount that a player might be paying, of course that's a big factor. But the advantage of Canada is, you can basically play for a third of the cost as going to the States. Yeah.
So since this is now the time, your season's over, now it's in the silly season, and the recruitment's going on, and you're planning showcases and these type of things. But what's the sales pitch let's not call it sales pitch, but what's your value proposition when you're trying to attract players? What are you, you're not going to be seeking the tier one player because they're going to be going to the USHL, or they're going to go to the tier one in Canada, or the junior A route, right? But the player, so who are you seeking as a general manager? Of course, Johan's your director of scouting, but when you guys are talking, what type of player are you looking for? Let's start with the age. So when you're recruiting now, you have a lot more leeway in the age that you're seeking.
Yeah, like the primary ages we'll be going after this season will probably be 04s or 05s that, like they're either graduating from AAA systems or, maybe they played their rookie season of junior and in a junior B or junior C, and they're looking to move up. If we're talking about Canadian or American,
Yep.
we're talking about Europeans. Yeah, like that's where asking who we're going to be targeting. So that's where I think it's important to understand what value you can really provide for a player. And at the tier 3 level, I think a lot of teams don't quite understand what path, like, why are you bringing them here? And yeah, like we're a pretty established club with a lot of players who would want to play here, and we get a lot of it. But one of the first questions that you go through in the interview is, okay, well, what are you looking to do with your hockey? And if maybe it's a player that's played major junior in Europe somewhere, like a Jacob Rodin who was on this podcast, or it's a Russian player that's played in the MHL, and it's for them it was, well, I've seen what it's like here. I don't want to be playing minor professional. I want to change my path to be a student. And yeah, okay, well, your options are to come to North America. That's your best chances for the D3 or ACHA route, and that's what these players are aspiring towards. Okay, so your options are US, these programs, these levels, this will be the costs associated. These are the visas you have to get, and so on and so forth, and you'll probably make it. Or your option is to come to Canada, a team like Rattlers, an import friendly team, and it'll be these conditions, this environment, and yeah, players make their choices based on that information. Or if you're dealing with, like, that's mostly for the 19, 20-year-olds, they have to be coming here with a certain type of ambition.
Yep.
For the younger ones, if we are bringing in a young player, the idea is if they're 16, 17, even 18 in some cases, if it's a European player, okay, come here rather than playing like U18 in your home country. Come play against older, stronger players. And at the end of the season, we'll send you for tryouts in tier 2. If they're Canadian, maybe a higher tier 2 level league like the CCHL, or maybe the BCHL is interesting with what's going on there, even for Europeans. Or we send you down to the States, North American Hockey League, NCDC, something like that, where players can be on. That's kind of it's not a value proposition. Is that learning more about, like, what are they looking to do, and then are we a part of that path or not? And yeah, it's not just bring in players trying to be a functional cog in their wheelhouse, in their path, and give them a stepping stone to get where they want to go. And if the Rattlers fit into that, fantastic. If they don't, that's fine too. And that's kind of how we go about the recruiting process.
So the typical, so the out of towners are coming in, which I'm sure it's the majority of them. Billet situation, right?
Yeah, they all live with families, usually 2 to 3 to a family.
Yeah, and then what's a typical day for these guys? How many of them are going to school?
Most of the time is only the local Canadians who go to school. The Europeans, they'll study online.
Yep.
I mean, if you're doing courses that way. So a typical day, like our program, we have a morning academy, we call it. It's a skills development academy from 11 to 12. So yeah, your day, you arrive at the ring at 10. You're on the ice from 11 to 12 with our skills coach. You're in the gym by 12:30. You'll do a workout till 2. After 2 o'clock every day, our team does video, 2 to 2:30. We have a video room in our rink, which is really nice. Then they're on the ice for team practice, between probably 2:45, right up till 4. And our rink's pretty generous here, so guys are usually able to go on early, stay on late, work on some other things that way. So that's pretty much their day, 4 days a week. And then on the weekends, Friday night, Saturdays, road trip, Sunday night home game, and then Monday would be a rest day. So yeah, for those players that have the time slot available that are not working or are not going to school, that morning academy program is being really successful with us and kind of giving us a bit more of an edge, on what some other programs are offering where they're just running team practice every day.
Yeah. But I mean, that's a pretty so the team structure from a standpoint, that's a pretty good offering. From your standpoint as a general manager, who are the coaches what's your coaching structure to be able to support that? Because do you have a strength guy? Do you have a skill guy, or is the head coach kind of running all of it?
No, so yeah, the head coach runs team practice. That's kind of when he'll run in. He'll also take over the majority of the video sessions. This year we had a great assistant coach who was taking care of the gym, video, and helping out at team practice. And then we have a third guy who was a skills coach, who would take pride in that. And during the morning academy, that's when the goalie coach would come out and work with the goalies as well. And yeah, kind of give them the full day. So it was pretty busy here at coaching front. We'd have 4 different coaches on the ice, between the 2 sessions in the gym and that. But in the gym, like these guys are much older, so they don't need as much direction.
Yeah.
In the gym, they kind of know what they got to work on.
But that's not necessarily the norm with your competition in GMHL.
Not at all. Like I'd say we're the only team doing this in this league, and a lot of teams around the world do something similar, but at the tier 3 level, it is pretty unique, and that's been one of our, I'd say, fundamental attractions of our pro is the player development. And yeah, like the results that we've had are certainly a factor of the training that goes into it.
And it's very similar to the Swedish junior structure of a J20 organization. Is that kind of where did that get pulled from Johan Lundskog originally, or how did that come?
I would say maybe in philosophy about focusing on development and trying to bring a program to the table that has more on ice time, more gym time, more video time than anybody else. That's kind of been a fundamental philosophy that we've had as a development program. But no, it wasn't necessarily implemented by him, but the philosophies of how do we train our guys more than everyone else is definitely go into that. And that's why, yeah, like in addition to we offer training 10 months a year for our players, not just, the 7 months in the season. And yeah, like that window is so short for these guys. And truthfully, if you find yourself in a tier 3 league in your age, 17, 18, 19, you're not in the CHL, you're not in the USHL, like that means you have to catch up, right?
Yep.
You're and you need a platform to be able to do that with. And I think that, yeah, having our morning skills academy, it's definitely brought, some players who, kind of were off their path back on path and on pace to be a D3 player or, something like that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's good. And I think that's like you mentioned before, not all you can't just, if you're looking at the USHL as an example, you could pretty much every roster you see are going to be D1 commits, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're the top team or the bottom team. They're all going to D1. And there's not, I think that there's very little discrepancy between the best and the worst. I mean, certainly there's nuances and some are better than others, but there's less discrepancy. And just like in the US tier 3 leagues, specifically in the USPHL, Elite and Premier, there's a lot of difference between the different organizations. And then there's some that they're great, but not everyone are great. And I think that's what I'm trying to do with, and just like we talked about with this podcast, is all about inform and educate. And what I'm trying to do is help shine the light on different options out there. I think it was Johan that was telling me before, there's a place for every player somewhere. We will find them a place. It may not be USHL, it may not be in the WHL, but people can,
Yeah, no, and that is another that we kind of work off in the summer camps is, like the sign of a good hockey program isn't how many players you turn away. It's everyone who knocks on your door, that individual, like if they're willing to work hard, they're willing to show up, they want to try themselves in this sport, and like maybe they don't have the talent, they don't have the resources, they started hockey later, maybe they didn't get enough training younger, like they're just not on that tier, first wave path. If you're that second wave, like who are we to decide what players, oh, you're not as good as a hockey player, so you're not as good as a person. Like that correlation to me has never made sense. So yeah, everyone who knocks on our door, at least with the summer camp portion, we try and provide them opportunities to maximize their own potential, give them a good experience, meet wonderful people, use the sport, in the way that develops them, as a person, the same way that, some of these elite players will. And yeah, your hockey might not be as good, so your options are more limited. Instead of playing in front of, 10,000 fans, you'll be playing in front of 50. But, or even like a minor hockey, like moving from single A to triple A, and, having that satisfaction and confidence in yourself to do that. That's what like our summer camp is, really, really stresses. And we have our elite groups. We have our groups of, players that are signing OHL, that are signing USHL and junior A. And then, from there we have four groups. And, by the last one, you're dealing with double A, single A players just trying to move up a little bit or have a good experience and meet some friends. And yeah, like I think in this industry, if we talked about it before we went live here, but if your ultimate goal is just stacking your ticker of NCAA D1 commits, that's a pretty unsatisfying way to approach a career in this. And I think you have to appreciate, some of the other advancements, whether it's, small one or from single A to triple A or triple A to junior B. Like you have to take satisfaction out of that. And some of our favorite players to work with over the years, weren't the strongest players, right? They just, like they dedicated themselves. They saw a lot of personal growth, and they ended up having great experience through the game. And yeah, that's definitely one of the philosophies we kind of have here with the summer camp as well.
Yeah. So before I get into too much about the summer camp, I want to talk about that next too. But so where are you in if we're looking at the team that so you're losing the two big Swedes, Rodin and Eriksson.
Yeah.
And are you losing your top scorer, the Russian guy?
Yeah. So, well, he's probably.
Let's talk about him for a second, because I just want to mention this because I think is pretty remarkable. So Stefan Levitsky, 38 games, 93 points. Pretty good year.
Unbelievable play. One of the best prospects we've had in the system. And yeah, the story with him. So he joined us last season, and he didn't even come from the top level in Russia. He came from double A hockey. He was an elite double A player in a very small town. And yeah, like he thought he was good, but like when you get to a bigger stage, you always assume the competition is going to be better. And when he came to us last season, he wasn't very good. I think he had 4 points in 10 games. And then like that's an example of a kid who like just trained all summer. He got a bit of taste of, okay, what does it take to play against older, stronger guys? And he thought the bar was super high. So he worked so hard all year. Like he came to every academy skate, every gym session. He's a funny kid, but he's one of the hardest working kids we've ever had. And yeah, as a prospect, he's had a lot of attention. We've had players in our Rattlers system that, were ranked by NHL Central Scouting before. And I'm pretty confident that he's as good as any of those kids that we've had in our system. So yeah, I think he'll end up in the States to one of the tier 2 leagues there. There are, a couple North American Hockey League teams that, are asking about tendering him or drafting him. And I think that's probably going to happen. And then, yeah, we'll go from there. But he's a special player. He's an interesting one for sure.
Yeah, he's an 04. I mean, my first thought was that he was an older kid, but he's only 18. So, but
yeah,
but then Rodin and Eriksson, of course. So I think Eriksson's going back to Sweden, right?
Yeah. So Eriksson, he actually has a bit of a luxury this year. So he started in this league last year. He ended up leaving at Christmas and joining the Alps Hockey League, which is an unbelievable pro league in Austria. And he went there, and yeah, he was kind of a third, fourth line center role. And they advised him to come back and work on his scoring touch because yeah, like that's what he needed to take advantage of his last year. So he did that. And yeah, like he has the luxury now of choosing. I believe he has 4 options between the Hockey Atan League and even Norway. so he's in a very good position, and yeah, I think we'll probably be announcing his commitment soon to what option. But yeah, like
Yeah.
he's a special player. He was a really good player before he came to Canada. Um, but yeah, like that was a kid who he was a part of Major Junior his whole life, but he was never a scorer, and he never had an opportunity to work on that element of his game. So yeah, like on paper, he was one of the more experienced players to ever come through our system. But like he came to every academy. He was training all the time. Like he's a true pro, and yeah, like he used the opportunity here to work on the offensive side of his game, so he can go back to pro and hopefully have a top six role instead of a bottom six role,
Yeah.
and find value in his season that way. And yeah, like he was a workhorse, and Jacob Rodin the same thing. We so many times those guys would pull the team out of every situation, and true professionals, winners, great character guys. And yeah, like they were a big part of why we won this year.
So where are you guys at with losing some of this? How do you feed with the replacements? You always have to, as a general manager, you can't rest on your laurels. So where are you at in terms of building next year's team?
Yeah, like I'm not so concerned about that. Our team's being strong every year, because we just run an attractive program that a lot of good players want to be a part of. And yeah, like even the season that Jacob had, committing to colleges, and Ericsson's had, and the development we even saw in some of our other Swedish guys like Arvid Malm, he's returning, it looks like. But what players call you because they want to do the same thing, and we have an infrastructure here. We have 100 players coming to our summer camp. A lot of them are elite AAA. Some of them are older, more experienced guys. A couple from the World Junior teams in Switzerland and Russia. So there's lots of infrastructure here, and our scouting network's quite wide. And yeah, like just the referrals we get from ex players, that's pretty much where our players come from. And we work pretty closely with a lot of junior A teams locally here, and there's so many good players out there on the market. There's lots of good players. So yeah, we'll have to replace some of those guys, but I'm not too concerned. It's just part of this level is you just have to replace scoring every year.
Yeah.
And
So,
then
so
yeah,
when does the season start for you guys?
we won't be starting till mid-September with training camp.
Okay, mid-September.
Yeah.
Wow, that's kind of late.
It is late. It is late. We do our summer season from May to July, and then we have our big training camp in July, and then yeah, we have our team starts mid-September. So it is a bit late, but it gives extra time for visas. The domino effect to start happening at some other levels,
Yep.
and it always leads to a couple interesting players coming down later in the recruiting summer.
That's a great point, though. That I haven't thought about that, but that makes a ton of sense in terms of, I mean, if you're a bottom null player, or and you're sitting there holding on, oh yeah, I made the null team, and then boom, here comes the trickle down from USHL, and now
Yeah.
all of a sudden I'm being moved, and now where do I go?
Yeah.
Versus
Yeah, we call that in the shuffle a bit, and yeah, like a lot of, and it's not just the North America, it's all junior A. Like everyone collects a group of players, and then when something better comes up, they cut them loose, or they try and they need to send them somewhere because yeah,
yep,
they just drag this player along all summer thinking he was on the team, and then at the last second, oh, now I have to make a change. So yeah, there's a lot of struggle, and some North American League coaches do endorse our program and send players our way, especially yeah, like when they're trying to hide a European player or something like that. It does happen, and yeah, we usually get a couple players because of that trickle down, and
yeah,
it's good. They're usually pretty strong players, and it works out.
yeah. All right, let's round out, but talk about so Elite Prospect Showcase. Uh, so it's got to fit in pretty well in the calendar year of in the off season. You fill your ice commitments in the off season with programming, and get you something to do too, right?
Yeah, no, it's a pretty special program we run there. I've been running the July camp now for 9 seasons with a youth sports coach named John Duco. He coaches Toronto Metro, so we've been doing that program together for program. We end up uh, bring in close to 100 players every summer, and we bring in a lot of guest coaches as well from the CHL, from the North American Hockey League, Junior A, AAA from this region. So we give exposure to our group of athletes, to work with all those levels. We kind of accumulate it all with a showcase at the end of it for a week,
Yep.
where we play games. We break it all up to 8 teams, and we give players a platform to play in front of CHL coaches, colleges, AAA teams, and we try and assist with placements for them. And then, additionally, we run a 3-month program. We call it our summer season, where players can come to Canada for 3 months. We train twice a day. We treat it like a junior team. They play in like close to 30 games between summer leagues and tournaments here, which I think not a lot of countries offer. So that program is pretty popular with European players to come over and spend 3 months in Canada, learn English, get treated
Yeah.
like a team, play 30 games, work with these elite level coaches, and we attract a lot of strong players that way. And some of them, the best fit for them, their next step is the Rattlers. Some of them, we'll put them in CHL training camps. We'll put them in junior A programs in Canada, North American. So we assist with advancement opportunities that way. But the interesting thing about that, and why I think teams, like, if you're a player that's committed your entire summer, 3 months, 1 month, to coming to Canada to train instead of going to the beach or hanging out with your friend, like, that's a pretty committed athlete,
Yeah.
which definitely adds a token. So whenever we're sending a player from those programs to higher level, they know they're getting someone who's serious and wants it, and that's been pretty successful for us.
Yeah. Let's end with this, but I'm curious about, because you've been there for a while, and the relationships that you build with these players, but how close as a general manager, I'm sure you have a real close relationship with the billets and the families and how they're connected with the programs, but the player themselves, is not just a coach who has the relationship with the players, but what's your relationship with the players?
Yeah, like at this level, in this position, I think you take on more of an advisor role as a GM as well, because you're not just, okay, you come here, you play for our team, and that's it. Like, you're trying to guide them through next steps a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And you do get quite close with the players and the families, I would say, on more professional manner. And around the right, like, you will joke with them, but in the season, I wouldn't say we talk so much with the players. You might just joke around with them at the rink in that. But it's more the guidance, I would say, post Rattlers. That's where you keep in touch with them more. And a lot of these players, they really appreciate the efforts we put in here for their junior program, especially if they played somewhere else before, they go someplace somewhere after, they realize maybe, like, what we're doing here, we try and go above and beyond. So a lot of them definitely appreciate that extra attention and trying to make their time here special. And the parents appreciate it too when they see when a team's going above and beyond to try and push their son and steer them in the right direction, and be a bit more of an advisor than just a GM.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your thoughts. Congrats on bringing home the trophy. Add it to the trophy case there, but I'm looking forward to kind of seeing how this goes. Learn a little bit more about the next crop of players are coming in, and as we go into the second season of the Swedish junior hockey. So,
well, I appreciate your time here. Thank you for having me. And I think it's an amazing thing you're doing here with this podcast. And it'll be interesting to see how next year rounds out for our programs. We can definitely maybe touch base next summer.
Yeah. Lastly, what if somebody wants to get a hold of you? What's the best way to get a hold of you specifically on the Rattler programs or the camp this summer?
Yeah, like the Bradford Rattlers, our website, rattlershockey.ca, our Instagram, the Bradford Rattlers, we're available there. Or the summer camp is called EP Showcase. It's a showcase development camp. There's a website, and the Instagram EP Showcase.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, and good luck with the rest of the summer.
All right. Thank you so much, Jacob.